Alrighty, welcome everybody to Solo Basics, I guess you can call it, or Smite tips and tricks. I mean, those all kind of come together. But I was asked to, can you do a solo guide and whatnot? And I mean, I've already covered everything else, but those are kind of dated, I suppose. So I might as well, go into this fresh and new. So maybe I can help you guys out with some of the basics to solo lane, also known as the short lane. And we need to get past this loading screen, please. Thank you very much. So whenever I play solo lane, I mainly play Raw. I love Raw in solo lane. He has very high sustain overall as far as damage is pretty good. But furthermore, he can heal himself. Clear minions really fast. And he's able to juke really well with his passive, able to slow people and blind them as well. So, and also his ulti, it's on a really short cooldown. So, I'm going to try to make this as fast as I can. So, right away, what gods are good for the solo lane? Like I said, I like to play Raw. Raw is really nice. In my opinion, I always pick them. Some other ones, you typically see more warriors into the solo lane. Now, since this is just a free roam jungle map, we're going to have to deal with bots, and apparently we do 3-man solo lane. So, yeah, back on the topic to what gods are good. Raw is good. Anubis can do good. Vulcan can do good. Typically, you see warriors, like I mentioned earlier, warriors are good, such as Hercules, Vamana. Tyr, not so much. Now he's been nerfed to the ground. Guan Yu can be pretty good. Shock. I mean, majority of the warriors are pretty good at solo lane, and some mages as well. But personally, I enjoy Raw. He's pretty easy and whatnot. So, like I said before in the loading screen, the short lane is the solo lane. Now, depending on which side of the map you spawn on, it can be on the left side or right side. Now, when you first start off, the starting items that I go with, and it's pretty much the meta, is getting Vampiric Shroud. The stats on this and that passive alone is going to help you keep sustain, and basically, in turn, if you don't know what that means, you can just stay in your lane longer than your opponent. You get, health and mana every time you clear a wave with Vampiric Shroud. And then also, I pick up the first level of Tiny Trinket. It's really cheap, and it gives you 20 power and lifesteal. So, on top of the Vampiric Shroud getting your health back, you're also going to have lifesteal on top of that as well. So, I recommend picking those two items up, and then personally, I pick up a couple potions. It's up to you if you want to save that gold and or, buy for potions or buy for wards or whatever. So, like I said before, depending on which side of the map you spawn on, kind of depends on where you're going to start off at. So, if you watch my jungle basics, I mentioned that the solo laner and the mid laner would typically be over here in this case. Doing the mid harpies, and then you move on to helping your jungler with red if he hasn't finished that, and then moving on to get your blue. It's very important to get your blue. Starting off as a solo laner, this is your main source of being able to sustain and out-sustain your opponent if they don't have blue as well. So it's very important, try to get your jungler's attention to help you get a blue at least. Now, if you can't really depend on your jungler to get blue for you, you may want to invest buying Hand of Gods or meditation or teleport, so you can quickly teleport back to your lane after you recall. So I'd recommend those few actives if you can't really depend on your jungler. Now, once you get to like mid game, you can solo your blue buff no problem. Now, if you're starting on the red side, of course, let's say do it from this perspective as well. You would be helping your jungler get the orange buff. So it's up to your jungler if he's going to use Hog on this or not, but you'd be starting at the speed camp with your jungler, and then you move on to the blue buff, you get your own blue buff, and then your jungler may or may not help you in this, in the very few stages, or very few minions helping you clear. But mana, please. But mana, you don't want this. So, of course, my HUD is all mixed. Yeah, my HUD is utterly destroyed since I tried to use it in the HUD editor. But yeah, those are pretty much just the foundations. Is picking up a good god, like I mentioned before, starting out properly. Sometimes when you do casuals, maybe in the lower queues, not everybody would know what's going on, so maybe a little awkward. You may be fighting 2 people. I've 1v2'd a lot of times doing the lower level queues. I mean, if that happens, just play your best. But it's best not to have your jungler in your lane for too long, like I've mentioned before in the jungler video, because he's gonna be stealing your XP. So yeah, pick a decent god. Start with Vampiric Shot, Tiny Trinkets. Help with mid harpies if you're on the blue side of the map. Then move on to red, then blue. Pick that up if you're on the red side. Help your jungler get an orange buff, and then get your blue buff, and then you're good to go from there. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for us as far as that. You may be wondering, what do I pick up after Tiny Trinket? Like, do I finish Tiny Trinket up to something, or do I get boots? I keep Tiny Trinket. I would go ahead and, just recall I finish boots first. I typically buy the cooldown boots for my raw, and then I go back to Tiny Trinket. It depends who you're fighting against. If you're in the solo lane against Vamana or Hercules or Shock, buy Divine Ruin. That's going to shut them down. Also, I forgot to mention Shunga is pretty good at the solo lane as well. If you're fighting against Shunga or Hell, use Divine Ruin. If you're not fighting a guy that's a healer or has high health regeneration, I would just go ahead and pick up Bancroft's talent personally. I would use Polynon, but it's nerfed to hell. Instead of 85%, it's now 50%. It's useless. So that's how it go. When should you sell Vampiric Shroud? I would sell it when you have pretty much all your items, and that's your last item slot. You could probably pick it up or sell it earlier if you need to finish out something. So that's pretty much just the core basics of the solo lane. Also, just keep an eye out on junglers, as far as enemy junglers. What your jungler, try to coordinate ganks. Keep an eye out on what your solo laner who you're fighting against is building. If they're buying wards, or what actives do they have? Do they have teleport or whatnot? So just keep on, just keep those few things in mind, and you should be good. So that's gonna wrap it up for the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.